Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where our commitment is to help, hope, and healing of our veteran family and our nation. I'm Jim Blythe, a U.S. Navy veteran and a certified senior advisor. Join us as we continue the mission of leadership and commitment to our communities and our great country. Why, you never know where we're going to go or who you're going to meet. We invite you to join in, plug in, and share in what we do. This is your Veterans Impact Show.
I've got a great special program and two very good friends. First of all, let me just tell you that I want to do a special thank you to DBTV Network for putting us on all of the internet things that we do, Amazon Fire, Roku, Apple TV, Smart TV. Really appreciate DBTV Network. And AUN out in California puts us on 11 of their stations. It's great. Thank you so much. And Jeff Crilly with Real News, who allows me to use this studio and all of his people. What a great team that I've got that we put things together. I also want to thank Fairway Independent Mortgage, my mortgage company. My MLS number is 311-548, and the corporate one is 2289. We're an equal opportunity lender, and now all of our attorneys are happy with me. So we can move on past that and talk about how important it is to stay informed, how important it is to know what's really going on. Because in today's world of all of, I think, the fake news, the manufactured news, the misguided news, there is an organization in Dallas-Fort Worth that is doing an amazing job and has done it for several years. The National Defense Briefing Series is headed up by John Campbell, Lieutenant General John Campbell. So I would like to welcome Lieutenant General John Campbell, U.S. Air Force, and Captain Marc Liebman, a hooky-took driver from Vietnam, helicopter rescue. Welcome, guys. These guys are amazing at what they do in the veteran community. So, General Campbell, would you tell us real quickly overview of what is NDBS?
Yeah, you bet. And Jim, thanks for having us on. This is a great opportunity to continue to build our brand and get the word out. And by the way, it's a little bit of a stretch to say that I run this thing because I'm just one of the five folks from member organizations that put this thing together. So I'm on paper the vice president of it. Chuck Daniels with MLWW is the president, and Mark's secretary, past secretary, now just the board member at large. But it's a cooperative deal. So this thing started back, and it seems like just yesterday, but looking back, it was, I guess, spring of 21 when we got together. And I give credit to Bob Epstein, who said, we do a lot of the same things. All of our veterans organizations do a lot of the same things. We have some individual things that are service-centric, but 80% of our stuff is we do the same things, supporting charities and youth and law enforcement. And his thought was, why don't we pool our efforts, get together, and see if we can do something bigger? And so we did. We said we'll do that. We put together the structure and our basic model was we're going to try to do a quarterly program. We called it the series on purpose to give the idea that it's going to be a continuing program. We do once a quarter. We started in June of 21 with our first one, which was Pat Walsh, who's a good friend of yours too, I know.
Yeah.
And
you saw him on my intro.
Yeah. And we do one a quarter. We've done, I think we're getting ready to do the 19th one. And that includes, by the way, 3 fundraisers that are sort of out of the normal battle rhythm, but are generate funds to help our charities. And we've collected over $250,000 during that time that goes out to our member organizations. But our idea was we're not going to do 20-minute lunchtime speech and 10 minutes of Q&A and go home. Our idea is let's have a lengthy or longer program built around a dinner with plenty of time for interactive Q&A. And we want to have nationally recognized subject matter experts that people will know and respect and want to talk to. So as an example, and I went through that this morning because it's 4 years. We've had the former Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, former Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the former CNO and Vice CNO of the Navy, former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, 2 astronauts, former officers from the Central Intelligence Agency, and analysts selected for their expertise from some of the best think tanks, and we're going to do that again.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the model.
So can I add one thing? So we raised in the 4 years, right around $500,000 that gets divided to the charities. We the people on the board run these things. We take no money other than the out-of-pocket expenses. So every dollar that we donate to the 5 founding charities stays in the Dallas area.
Yes.
So not only are we helping to inform the public, which is task one or mission one, but we're also raising money to go to charities to do all kinds of interesting things that we don't have the arms and legs to do, but that's what they do. And now they have extra money in their pocket.
What we do, I'm on the board of Navy League, and I serve with Navy League, helping with Sea Cadets, and also we have a scholarship foundation for kids in the high school ROTC program as well as the Sea Cadets. So we support the Sea Cadets, and then we support scholarships for Sea Cadets and for high school kids. That's what we do with the money. So all of that money keeps going right on out the door. We don't keep any of it in Navy League, and we don't take anything out of it. So we've got to establish this. Now, I wanted to talk because we're in a tumultuous time right now. It's really amazing some of the things that are going on. When you told me, General Campbell, what you were getting ready to do for this particular program, and Veterans Impact Show has been in all of these for the last, 3 years, 4 years?
At least. Sure.
Yeah. So this one is critically important because it's going to be an educational thing. So maybe, Marc, you jump into what is this program coming up going to be, and talk about some of the key points of that.
Okay, this is great. So it's a great question, and it's actually the core of what we do. So back in March, General Campbell and I, and the board started to talk about what are we going to do in upcoming events. And we came up with this idea called Great Power Competition, because we've seen the rise of the People's Republic of China. We've seen what Russia has done with Ukraine. We've seen the mayhem that Iran has done through proxy terrorist organizations. And all this is a way to challenge the United States and what we refer to, we being the U.S. and the rest of the Western free world, the rules-based order that's been in place roughly since 1945. And so when you look at these 4 countries, and actually there's a fifth, three countries, actually a fifth, called the People's Republic of North Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, their objectives are to disrupt this and cause mayhem so they can achieve their foreign policy goals, because they all have different goals. And they've created this thing loosely that Iran called the Axis of Resistance. It's a loose federation. It's not really an alliance. It's not really a formal organization, but it's the one that coordinates amongst themselves. So the leaders theoretically talk back and forth. You're going to see in the news that Putin is going to go visit the PRC. You can see that Iran is talking about turning more to China for military assistance, and Russia, all these kinds of things. So this is where these are what these people do. But the goal of these countries is to essentially disrupt the world as we know it today, and as pretty much everybody who's been listening to this program has grown up in. So it's on air, it's on land, it's on sea and above the sea, but it's also economic, it's also political, it's all kinds of ways that they're sticking a sharp stick in our eye, so to speak. And so what we came up with was this idea to do the Great Power Competition. And so we did the first one was air power. And we had General Deptula come in and came in and did a great presentation on how air power is going to play in this role, or in this concept of how the world's come about. We use 2049 as an arbitrary date only because it's the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic of China and the founding of it. But it's reality and much closer in terms of dates. So the next one, we are scratching our heads. And do we want to do land? We want to sea. As it turns out, we have a speaker for the sea piece in October. And I reached out to contacts at the Institute of Study War. So if you watch Fox TV, you'll see a guy by the name of General Keane. He's he was the chairman, but he's also one of their most common viewed speakers. And I started asking, hey, could you guys send us some analysts who could talk about this? And so they said, this is really interesting. We're in the process of creating a study group to look at this thing called Great Power Competition. And we started laughing because they were going down the same roads we were. So, make a long story short, we agreed, or they agreed to provide two analysts, Joanna Moore, who is the co-lead of their Middle East team, which focuses, and her job is to focus primarily on Iran and its relationship with other countries, and Christina Harward, who was born in what we would call Russia, actually Lithuania, and grew up in St. Petersburg, and she is an expert on Russia and its relationships with its other nations and what's going on in the Ukraine. So we thought these two young ladies would come down and talk to our audience. Now, what they do is they keep it at a high enough level, or we'll keep it at a high enough level so that everybody understands the details. But the great thing about our events is you get to ask questions.
Yeah.
So General Campbell is the moderator, does a great job at that. And sometime around minute 40, the speakers, I use the word sit down, but in this case, I'll probably sit at a table or sit in two comfy chairs on the stage, and we hand out mics. And we have mics that float around the audience. He takes questions via email and
email or
text.
written cards.
Written cards, right. Yeah. And I couldn't think of the written cards. And reads the questions. And then we get answers. And the questions are very, very insightful. One of the pleasures and one of the great things about these events is that we invite members of the ROTC and junior ROTC units to attend. We typically have about 20, 25, and these are young men and women who are anywhere from 16 to 22. And some of the most insightful questions we get comes out of the mouths of these kids. And you go, oh my goodness, where'd that come from?
Yeah, I've been really pleased with the quality of the questions we get from the audience. Sometimes doing live Q&A is always a little dangerous because you never know what you're going to get. But our audience is good. They respect the speakers, respect the venue and the program, and ask really, really good questions. And we have a number of our elected officials, including our representative in Congress, who has come to every single one of these programs.
Absolutely.
And he takes notes.
And Keith is tremendous, Congressman Keith Self.
Absolutely.
He is also a veteran.
Oh, yeah.
And
he actually emceed and moderated one of our programs on the southern border.
Oh,
Right.
really? That's right.
That's
He
right.
did.
Yeah.
He did. I think it's also a lot of people don't understand, for instance, some of the changes that are going on in war and war fighting. I think they're going to be talking about some of this, aren't they, Mark?
Yes, we're going to try to get them, and I have a conversation that I'm going to probably schedule middle of this month, July. And we're going to go over the program only because what we originally started out with when we agreed to this, the world's changed a bit since then. And that was back in March. So we're going to get them to focus on where does the world go from here and what's happening in the future at a high enough level so when people see things happening, we'll understand the context. So I don't want to get into the specifics of what they're going to say because A, I don't know. B, we still have 20 days. Let's see, a second. We have 25 days to go, and Lord only knows what's
Things can change in a hurry.
Yeah, things can change in a hurry.
Yeah.
But but that's what they're going to focus on. And again, they're experts in this field. If you go to the Institute of Study of War's website, which is understandingwar.org, you can read a lot and subscribe to a lot of their reports. And they have been spot on. They are very accurate. I tell people it's like reading intelligence reports when I was back on active duty. It's very detailed, and it's also understandable. And they explain the context. This is why this is going on. So the last night, for example, they had a report on their daily report on what's going on in Iran. And essentially what it said, the takeaway for me was the power struggle within the Iranian government has begun because suddenly you have a moderate who's risen his head, who's tried to run for a re-election. If you understand how the government around works, you understand he didn't stand a snowball's chance in Hades to get there. But so he's rising up. There are some ultra conservatives or even farther who want to launch everything at Israel and continue the fight, blah, blah, blah. And so
the interesting part of the Middle East thing right now, though, in the context of great war competition, is that the great powers have pretty much stayed out of it.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Except for one.
Except for one.
Why did you talk about that? It's a great segue.
Well, General Campbell,
talk about how they've stayed, how Russia and the PRC have stayed out of this.
Yeah, I think the Iranians were surprised and disappointed that both Russia and PRC said, "We're just going to watch and see what happens." They're trying to figure out where their support base is going to be. Mm-hmm. Russia had always been the primary place, probably because of all the help they've given the Russians in the war in Ukraine with drones and such. But the Russians were AWL, and PRC is not interested in getting into a regional conflict, so they're kind of setting this one out also. But that is in the context of where the great power competition goes and when they decide to act. And mark my words, both Russia and China are taking notes and watching what's going on and watching what we do.
Absolutely. And one of the things I didn't realize till I read, Iran sells 90% of its oil to PRC. And this is going to change the dynamics of that in terms of world oil and world power with oil. And so these ladies are going to be talking about it because oil is going to become an integral part of what's going on.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why when you heard some I use the word loosely elected official in the Iranian government say we're going to close the Straits of Hormuz. Well, that would be like slicing their head off because the port at Jask, which is outside the Arabian Gulf or Persian Gulf, is not large enough to handle the volume, even just to support the PRC. And that means that none of their oil is going to get to market, and it basically forces the sanctions ahead of them. So, force the sanctions already in place. So that's just not going to happen.
So when we come back, we're going to take a break, and we'll hear from all of our partners. But when we come back, General Campbell, your Air Force, you were involved in so much. I'd like to interject when you're talking about how this is changing the world order. What happened when we dropped the bunker buster bomb? And I want to dispel some of the bad misinformation that's out there in terms of we were trying to start a nuclear war. What I want to really focus, though, is what we've seen afterwards. And that's one of the things they're going to be talking about, because this is an ever-evolving, daily changing situation. So we're going to be right back after these words from all of our partners. This is Jim Blythe, and I'm missing Cedric White, my partner. He couldn't be here today. Cedric, we miss you, but we're here for you, and this is Veterans Impact Show.
Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
This is an incredible conversation, and we're talking about the National Defense Briefing Series. And Andrew, if you could put that up again where we can show it. We'd like for you to go, and if you're in the DFW area, you're going to see the Great Power Competition. It says register now. If you want to come, it's a dinner, it's an evening. It is so much camaraderie with men and women who have served. I'd say probably, 60% of our audience are veterans?
Yeah, I think so.
Wouldn't you say that's the case?
Yeah.
And these are very, very informed people. These two women, I've read their information. I read what Mark has sent me. This is going to be one of the most, I think, interesting and insightful things, especially with what is going on right now. Like I just said, it's changing on a daily basis, maybe even an hourly basis, as we're seeing what is evolved in this great power competition. It's a lot to do. And guess what? Mr. and Ms. America, it affects you. It's going to affect all of us one way or the other. And if this thing goes south, then we're not going to be real happy. And all of this, in my opinion, you correct me if you think I'm wrong, is really directed towards bringing the United States down.
Yeah, but if it goes south, I'm going to apply to get back on active duty. I think General Campbell would too. So, General, talk about the B-2 strike and why the significance of it beyond just dropping, 14 big bombs?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One, I saw the report or the summary of the notes that you got from ISW, and one of the statements really jumped out that said the Israeli-Iran war showed that only lethal force and readiness to use it ruthlessly and prudently works. And that's the definition of deterrence. Deterrence is the combination of capability and will, and we've showed we have those two. And you got to do that once in a while, or otherwise you make threats and they're hollow because people are deciding you're not going to do it. So I think what happened with the B-2s is a huge signal to the rest of the people who would do us harm. I'm a little concerned that we are going to take some of the wrong lessons out of that, though. First of all, the crews that did it and the planners that put it together and the training and acquisition of hardware that went behind it was incredible. We've been training since Vietnam to build a capability to do something like this, and it really worked out. I love what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, said in his press conference. I thought he hit it right on the head. Didn't get into politics. He just said the crews executed the mission perfectly, and every bomb went right to where it's supposed to be. And that's all you can ask for.
That's all you can ask for.
All the noise about the damage assessment is just noise. You can look at pictures from the surface, but you don't know what went on under the surface. And until somebody gets on scene and digs down and takes a look, then we'll know. So
that probably isn't going to happen anytime soon.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. To me, that's an indication if the Iranians let the IE back in there and let them take a look, maybe they're serious. But I can guarantee you that the military planners are not kicked back and saying, job done, don't have to worry about that again. But here's the thing that I worry a little bit about. We made it look so easy, and I think sometimes we're the victim of our own success. The men and women in our military, all the services, are going to get the job done if they possibly can, even if it takes extraordinary efforts. We've got 19 B-1s. We only ever built 21. 2 of them crashed. We got 19. We used 9 on that mission, 7 in the strike package and 2 decoys. So that's 47% of the total force. And that's about the mission capable rate of the force. So my guess is they used every airplane that would fly on that mission. So people that say, hey, we got this force, we can fly from Missouri to Beijing and back, no problem. It's a very fragile capability. And when you fly 40-hour missions, you're only going to get 2 or 3 missions a week out of each airplane.
Yeah.
So this is a great capability, but it's not scalable up to the point of a war in the Pacific, and that's something we ought to. And the same thing goes for the Navy. I don't know. Mark probably knows what proportion of the naval force has been used beating up on the Houthis, who are not even a footnote in the National Defense Strategy.
Right.
So we got to be careful. We don't make it look too easy, and that's a story we need to tell to the American public, to our leadership, and to people in Congress, because if we don't resource our military, we haven't done it properly since the end of the Cold War, we're going to have trouble.
Do you guys, let me ask you just a second, Mark. Do you guys remember, and I don't remember the year, but when we flew in to Tehran to try and get a bunch of Americans out?
1980.
And was it 1980? Because the Shah was kicked out in 1979. So 1980, and that mission was a disaster.
Yep.
It certainly was. By the way, it changed my career.
I'm sure it did. Okay.
No, it did, literally.
So the last time we really had something that we tried to do when in Iran, it didn't work.
Well, that's not entirely true.
But that was a lesson we learned, though. That was the beginning of Joint Special Operations Command, when he said we got to not just get together on the day of execution. We got to train for this, and that goes back to my point, Jim, about training since the end of the Vietnam War to do this kind of stuff. And we've evolved in our joint planning and thinking, and that's.
But don't you think that sent a very chilling message to not only Iran, but the other superpowers, that there was no glitches, and it was so precise, and it was so devastating, and we didn't lose a single plane or pilot or anybody.
Well, neither did the Israelis. But so here's the message of that strike. So I want to second something that General Campbell said, is what most Americans don't understand is the hours of blood, what Churchill said, blood, sweat, tears, and toil it takes to be able to carry out such a mission. Now, I'm not a bomber pilot, but I've done all the kinds of weird stuff where you spend weeks literally every day going over the minutia and knowing that the first contact with the enemy, you're going to go to, something's going to happen. And I'm sure on that strike, that happened. We just don't know about it. Well, my point is this takes money, it takes resources, it takes, it just doesn't happen out of whole cloth.
All right, we're going to take another break, and then we're going to come back and continue this conversation about the great power struggle that's going on in the world and how we with the NDBS, and I'm buying a table, I'm going to be there, we are learning, and we're learning about the world. It is changing constantly, absolutely, right now. And there's so much about that. And so this is going to come from this fantastic Study of War Institute. Is that right, Mark?
Institute for the Study of War.
All right. So we're going to be right back to talk more about that in just a second. You're here with the Veterans Impact Show, and we're here for you. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. Hey, welcome back. This is Jim Blythe. Again, we're talking with Lieutenant General John Campbell, very good friend, did an amazing job with the event that we just did at the Medal of Honor Museum. Thank you, General Campbell. Thanks. Mark, you're a tremendous author. You've got 17 books, and how many bestsellers?
6 now.
6 now. And your age of sail is all about history, and so you do as much research as anybody I've ever seen. Also, all of the books you've done, when you wrote your first book about Vietnam, you remember the phone call that I called you up and I said, Mark, this is not fiction. And he goes, yeah, I know, because I was there on the Oriskany. So these two men have so much experience in the military. Mark being captain in the military. How many years were you in?
26.
26. And General Campbell?
32.
32. Me, I was only enlisted man for 4 years, man. I went back to college.
4 years is not not negative. You served honorably. You have an honorable discharge. You did good stuff.
Yeah, I was in the Vietnam deal, and I was on one of the ships you were on. All right, let's go back to what we were talking about. And where did you want to go with this next, Mark?
I want to do a quick overview of how we got here, so to speak. We, the world, got here. So there's 3 major players in this game besides the United States and Israel. There's Russia, the People's Republic of China, and Iran. So they're all at a crossroad right now because, as General Campbell said, the military planners and the politicians in Russia and in the PRC, and obviously what those are left in Iran, are all going, what the heck just happened? Because the IDF decimated the air defense systems. They put bombs on target for 10, 12 days, didn't lose a man. They decapitated, they did a whole bunch of really cool things from a military perspective. And then all of a sudden, Trump said, look, you're not coming to the table, you're not going to have a nuclear program. And suddenly bombs rained down from B-2s. And the world went, whoa, what just happened? So let's talk about the PRC first, because it's actually the pacing threat, at least to most military planners today in the United States, or at least was until June. Xi has made it clear that he wants to invade Taiwan. And how do you fight a Pacific war? It's very similar to the World War II and what we did in the Pacific, except instead of crossing the Pacific through a bunch of islands, it's essentially going to be one big island. But again, it's an issue of bases, it's an issue about systems, it's about a whole host of things. But the PRC is spending billions of won developing a military capability. And we have to, as military planners and as a country, have to honor the threat. The deterrence, as General Campbell says, the will and the power to use it, and the willingness to use it. And so they're probably rethinking their strategy. But the Chinese have issues amongst themselves. I don't want to get into a lot of them, but their economy is fragile. It's dependent on exports. The People's Liberation Army, Navy, and Air Force has not been in combat since 1979. And when they did, they got their clocks cleaned by the Vietnamese. They never conducted an amphibious operation anywhere near the scale of what it would take to invade Taiwan, because you should think of something along the lines of the invasion of Okinawa or Normandy. So the PRC is out there. And they're allied with Iran. They're their biggest oil customer. They supply most of the propellant for their rockets. So there's a whole bunch of things that are going back and forth between Iran and the PRC. So then there is Russia. Russia under Putin is at a terrible crossroads because he's in a war he can't win. And it just hasn't dawned on him yet, or if it has dawned on him, he is in a corner and he can't do anything. His army is suffering about 7,500 casualties a week. That's 30,000 a month. And by now, the total head count of his casualties, depending on which estimate you believe, is somewhere around 1 million men, of which about three quarters of a million are dead. The rest, a large portion, are crippled for life, and then there's the rest of them who are going to recover from their wounds. So he's got his economy on a war footing. He's running out of foreign exchange. As the sanctions begin to tighten on his economy, it's getting weaker and weaker. And so some analysts will tell you that if he does not defeat Ukraine by the end of this year, he's in trouble. So the question is, what happens with Russia? So he's at a crossroad. And then the last part is Iran. Iran has a choice to make. It's pretty binary. Continue with your nuclear program, and bad things are going to happen, maybe, or continue with your nuclear program again, which you're not quite sure what's going to happen because Iran does not have many friends in the world. It is the largest state sponsor of terrorism. It's got active programs trying to overthrow the monarchies throughout the Middle East and in other countries. It has declared war on Israel, and I can get into how all that happened, but the Israelis saw the Iranians as an existential threat. And the estimates was by the end of next year, they would have 5,000 ballistic missiles ready to fire at Israel with 1 ton or larger warheads. And Israel said, and they're going to they're going to have a bomb within 2 weeks to a month. We're just not going to let this happen. So on June 13th, you saw, whenever the Israelis started, 61 days after President Trump gave the Iranians a deadline, the Israelis acted. So the question is what is going to happen, and how are all these three countries related? Well, they're related through the axis of resistance, and it's clearly not an alliance, because if it had been, there may have been some clauses in the agreements which caused them to come to defense of each other. But also some of the dynamics, and this is, again, if you attend this briefing, you'll learn about the dynamics between the PRC and the Russian leadership. They don't trust each other, to be blunt. And the dynamics between Russia and Iran, and the PRC and Iran, and their different relationships. And the fact that they did not come to the help of the Iranians, to me, is a huge signal to the rest of the world, because how many times in my lifetime, General Campbell's lifetime, Jim Blight's lifetime, have we sent our young men and women into combat in somebody else's defense?
Yeah.
Kind of a comment, Jim. That was a great walk around the world, and I think that it's a good summary of the situation. I'm more interested, frankly, in what we're going to do about it as a country. We've got the National Defense Strategy lays out what we're going to do to structure our forces to combat the threat. And the last one was in 2022. We should have one coming up in 2026. It's every 4 years, mid-cycle of the president's term. And for decades, it has been unrealistic. It commits us to fight two major regional conflicts and take care of a whole raft of other things and do nuclear deterrence and all those things, which are impossible to do based on the forces we've got. So the question is, are we going to develop a national defense strategy that's realistic and resource-based? And by that, I mean, if you're going to take on these threats and base our foreign policy on it, you kind of need to have the capability to enforce that, to do it. That's a really, really heavy lift politically for any administration to do that. But I think what we have now is leading us down a road that's not the right path. And what I'm concerned about, and I've told Mark this, I'm concerned we're going to go from this rules-based order to sort of a regional hegemony order where the Russians get Europe, the Chinese get the Pacific, Middle East is up for grabs, and we get the Western Hemisphere. And that is more realistic in a resource-based.
One of the things I know Ken George, who was the ambassador to Paraguay. Now, he is a rancher, but what he made a point was that the Chinese have opened ports and have bought enormous amounts of land in these countries in South America for agriculture, because the biggest fear the Chinese have is food shortages. They don't have the arable land. There's something wrong, and I don't know enough about agronomy, that they can't raise enough food to take care of their own people. So they have said, we are going to dominate the sea lanes. We're going to dominate the world. I'm not going to let my people starve to death.
Well, the Chinese agricultural system is based on the Soviet model, and we all know how well that performed. So I don't want to. I have a slightly different view of the world than General Campbell. But the biggest problem we have with whatever military strategy it is we have to fund the resources to achieve it. And so I grew up in a period where we're going to fight two major regional conflicts and do nuclear deterrence. And there's no way in hell we could ever have done that since probably the end of Desert Shield, Desert Storm. But even before then, I think it was a pipe dream. So the question now becomes okay, what's our strategy? And this gets to the core of what NDBS is about. What's our national strategy? What do we have to do politically and to fund it? Okay.
Well, I think, Mark, that's kind of what I said. I mean,
Yes.
are we going to have a strategy that we can resource and build to?
And that's the thing. With the way our house is divided right now, I'm not sure you could get anybody to really agree. I mean, I'm concerned.
These are hard choices. They're always going to be hard choices. Anything that delays, that pushes rewards downstream at the expense of immediate gratification is a hard sell politically. It's a lot more popular to cut taxes and boost spending now instead of putting money against something we're not going to see for 20 years. And Mark mentioned the 2049 period for the 100th anniversary of the PRC. That's how long it took to get the F-35 from drawing board to the flight line. So if we're going to be ready to fight in 2025, we got to start 2049. We got to start now. Yeah. And spending money now for something we're going to see 25 years from now, it's
really tough. But what pains me is every time I see U.S. Navy ships coming back to port, whether they're destroyers, aircraft carriers, oilers, they're covered in rust. Back when I was on active duty, a CO allowed a ship to have that much visible rust would have been relieved on the spot. And the reason being is because we don't have the money to A, do the maintenance, and B, they're so overcommitted. The Air Force is the same way, but the Navy's used to being forward deployed. That's our mission. We're the nation's, with all due respect to the Air Force, 911 force, we in the Marines. And so we're maintaining presences in the world, literally all over the world. And suddenly now we're down to 9 aircraft carriers that are deployable, and we still have literally treaty commitments to have 2 in the Med, 1 in the Atlantic, 1 in the Western Pacific, 1 home port in Japan, and 1 in the Arabian and the Indian Ocean. And that's 5 or 6 by my count. To do that, you need 18.
Yeah.
And we have 9.
Well, Jim, here's another good example. We talked about the B-2 fleet. We're getting ready to build the B-21. Now we want our target's 100 of those, which is where we start off the B-2. We ended up with 21 B-2s. If that's the same thing that happens to the B-21, we're going to be, but those things are going to be enormously expensive airplanes. So the question is, are we ready to make the sacrifice?
Well, the other thing is we are so low on ships by comparison. I mean, you talk about we need, how many aircraft carriers did you say we need? And we
18.
And we've got maybe 9 now.
You're dreaming.
I understand, but I'm just saying, if you look at the treaty requirements,
I get it.
It's
That's
18.
the problem with a national defense strategy that commits us to something that if you start to plan against that, you come up with these numbers. The Air Force wants, 386 fighter squadrons. Oh, that's crazy. You can't do it. But that's what it takes to to resource the national defense strategy.
Here's the thing: if we get into a situation, will we be like we were at the outbreak of World War II in 1939 and 1940?
In some ways, we're worse. In some ways, we're better.
And don't forget, we had 2 years to build up.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is the pace of war today is much faster, and we can build things in the United States today that we would have struggled with in 1939, but there are also things we can no longer build, like cold, rolled steel for armor plate.
Let me ask you another question. John Antal wrote a book, I think it was 7 Seconds to Die, about a very, very little known war in that Azerbaijan, in that area.
In Armenia.
Yeah,
And it was over just like that. And the underdog won because he talked about in his book how war changed.
Well, he actually spoke on
He was
one of our
speakers.
Yeah.
and he talked about the book, and it was interesting but not compelling to me. But guess what? That was a precursor for what's happening in Ukraine, and he's exactly right.
But it's more, what Ukraine is proving is that you've got to be able to adapt technologically quickly, but it still takes the grunt on the ground to hold a piece of ground.
Yeah.
And you still have to kill the bad guys. And what Ukraine is proving is how you can, with pretty creative ways, you can strike back at a militarily superior military. And the drone strike on the Russian airfields deep inside Russia was brilliant. It's been overshadowed by what the Israelis did in Iran. But when you think about this, they got Russian truck drivers to take tractor trailers with these these houses, park them outside Russian air bases, thousands of kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and then using the Russian telephone network, activate these things, provide a data link so that an operator, which has now been infiltrated there, can sit there and go beep and drive drones into bombers. They took out about a third of the strategic bomber force the Soviets had, and those airplanes are literally irreplaceable because they've been out of production and they can't make them anymore.
So that's a lesson too that we need to heed, because we're going to have forces deployed around the Pacific, and you can't control everything that's on the ground around those bases. So if there's a shipping container sitting outside your base, what's in there? You going to check every one?
Having been there, and so has Mark, there's a whole lot of things right here in the United States that you could bring this country to its knees in a few hours if you knew how to do it.
And we haven't talked about the cyber piece either.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that going on. There's also, I think, within our own country, we've got people who are trying to bring us down. And I'm bordering on getting into political conversation, but we've seen it, and we've seen it in the previous administration. And I think we're seeing it in people today paying to have peaceful protests that are paid to turn into riots. So I think they're attacking us where it hurts the most, which is right here.
In the last month, the FBI has arrested on 2 different occasions Chinese nationals for espionage. So I'm not surprised. I'm surprised what is surprising is how long it took them to realize that they're a threat. All you have to do is be in the business world.
Yeah.
All right.
When we come back, we're going to finish this conversation up. General John Campbell, thank you for coming in and being on board and staying with us. And Captain Liebman, helicopter pilot, I mean to tell you, some of the things you did in Vietnam were pretty amazing. So we've got amazing people here, and the National Defense Briefing Series is an amazing thing. Again, we're going to put that website up. We want you to take a look. You can come and join us Sunday, the 27th at Heritage Ranch for a great program. So we'll be right back after these words.
Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
This is an amazing conversation, and I'll tell you, we had a conversation because DBTV Network and AUN put us basically around the United States and around the world. They are going to video this program that's done at Heritage Ranch. And General Campbell and Mark, you just said, hey, Jim, we're going to give you the access to that program. So we're going to repost it in sometime in the future as a Veterans Impact show. What we want to make a point of, though, is we want to be an information source in the United States to really help you understand what's going on. And to do that, it takes donations. It takes money. I put in money by buying a table, and I have people come. I want you to take a look. If you're in Oklahoma, if you're in Mississippi, if you're in Florida, and you want to support this kind of information, then go to the National Defense Briefing Series and take a look. There's a donate button. If you're in DFW, we'd love to have you come join us at Heritage Ranch. It's a tremendous opportunity to meet with a lot of great, great people. So again, my call to action is go to the National Defense Briefing Series, go to their site, register if you're in the DFW area, and you can donate as well. Find out about the Institute of War that Mark is bringing to us. That's going to be an amazing program. And then you've got another amazing program coming up in October, correct, General Campbell?
Yeah, that's, I believe, Manzir.
Yeah, so we
Captain
have Rear Admiral
Mann.
Mike Manazir,
Yeah.
call sign Nasty, who at his last billet was the N98, which is the guy who says to Chief of Naval Operations, this is what we need to fight a war that you want, that we're designing that we're envisioning through our national strategy. This is what we need to fight. This is roughly how we're going to fight it. And these, oh, by the way, are the toys that we need to fight it. And so Rear Admiral Manazir, since retiring the Navy a couple of years ago, worked for Boeing in the FAA 18E and F program office, and also now works for a startup that does inexpensive cruise missiles. And so he's got a pretty interesting perspective, and I think he'll be very interesting. Plus, the fact he's a pretty dynamic speaker.
He is. I've had him on my program.
Yeah.
And
I was going
Nasty is also a good friend of a very good friend of mine, Woody Beal.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, we have some resources to be able to really help. So October, that's going to be a
October
great
26th.
program. October what?
26th.
26th. All right. I will be there, and we'll be there on this month on the 27th. I want to say again, a call to action. Be a part. Get the correct information. Get information that come from trusted resources that have been checked out, such as this Institute of War. Again,
Institute for the Study of War.
Institute for the Study of War. Thank you so much, Mark. And go to NDBS because you can find out about these people. It's important to take a look. It's important to be a part. And you can be, whether you are in Trenton, New Jersey, or Philadelphia, or Florida, you can be a part of this by being a donor,
I
right?
have a couple of thoughts about, number one, all of our past programs are archived on the website.
Oh, that's right.
So if you go back there and see what we have done for the last 4 years. The second thing is that there's a sponsor benefactor link.
Yes.
And if you join those, then we will promote you personally or your business in our programs on our website. So that's, you can become recognized as a sponsor benefactor for NEBS.
And you don't have to be there joining us for dinner. And just one last thing is the Institute of Study of War's website is understandingwar.org. And our website, National Defense Briefing Series, is ndbsinc.org, or with the www in front of it. So it's www.ndbsinc.org. Type it into Google, and up will pop our website. There's lots of stuff on it. You can reach, like I said, you can watch all the programs that we've had. Some of them are pretty interesting, particularly when you see some of the guests. And I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, you can go to Veterans Impact Show. I would ask you to share this as well. Make people aware. Make people aware if you're a member of a veteran service organization. Make people aware around the nation of what we're trying to do to get the correct information out. Give you an opportunity to learn. Give you an opportunity to also see how we showcase veterans who are doing amazing things. in the community, whether it's writing a book, which are some pretty darn good books there, Mark. I've really enjoyed them. Or some of the things that you have led, General Campbell, that I participate in. This is what veterans do. We lead the way. And there's so much that we can do in every community to mentor to the homeless, mentor to the fatherless, mentor to the grandfatherless. Be a part of Naval ROTC. Be a part of your school's ROTC. Be active as a veteran in speaking into the lives of children who need to hear from veterans, because there are not enough of us around and there's too much misinformation out there.
Yeah, but veterans are known to be, I hate to use the word committed, but we all desire to serve.
That's right.
And we all desire, and as by doing so, we have a tendency to lead the way. And the fighter pilot that's on my left, I have all the respect in the world for, mainly because I'm jealous, but that's beside the point.
Well, you got to go dick them out of the water. Okay, guys.
But I'm a frustrated fighter pilot. That's another story we can do at another show some other time.
All right, we'll do that. I need to say a quick prayer because I like to close with a prayer. Lord God of the universe, we are so eternally grateful for men and women who have served this nation, and we thank you for them. We thank you for our men and women who are currently serving overseas and around the world to protect this nation and to protect our people. We thank you for our first responders. Also, these men and women run into the fire instead of away from it. So we thank you, God, for your hedge of protection. We thank you for watching over them and watching over their families and keeping them safe as well. Thank you, dear God, for all you do in blessing this great nation. Help us, dear God, as veterans to lead the way, to bring this nation back together again, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Thank you, Lord God. We appreciate it, and amen.
Amen.
Guys, it's been a great opportunity. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Lieutenant General Campbell. This has been a wonderful day. Take a look, share this on YouTube, share it on Facebook, and go to the Veterans Impact Show. We're here for you. Share it.